Now, just to continue further, what is corporation? So, when a joint stock firms get listed on the stock exchange, so in that case, uh, uh, all the finances or the major portions, maybe 25%, 30%, or 40%, is taken from the public. So, what happens that once you list your corporation on the stock exchanges, there are public laws that the corporation has to follow. Because naturally the investor who is investing in the joint stock firm, he needs an protection. Why he needs an protection? Because sometimes the person is investing his whole lifelong earning into an corporation. So in the larger public interest, or you can call it in the larger macroeconomics interest of the country, the government who is ruling that particular country or that particular land builds up an law so that the corporation follows a very good principle of corporate governance. So you can see corporation can enter into an contract, and it can list it on the stock exchange. And so the word limited is there. So what do you mean by the word limited? In UK you call it limited company. In German, I don't know how to pronounce it, Gesellschaft, and then in France you call it Society Anonyme, and in China you have corporation. So what do you mean by the word limited? So limited, it means that the liability of the corporation is limited. In case if the firm goes to an bankruptcy, then the creditors may get the money which are limited to the share value, or it is called as a net worth, or it may also be called as the book value of the firm. So the risk is very high for the shareholders. So because the liability in case of insolvency of the corporation is very, very limited. So, what are the advantages of the corporate firm in case if it lists on the joint stock exchange? The first and very important advantage of the corporation firm is that it gets the capital, which is very important for an corporation to run. It is known as capital as the life or the blood of the organization. So the corporation can use various forms to fund its operations. The first way is through equity share. The second way is it can issue a bond, or it can borrow money from the bank. So owner need to know how to run the business, because in a particular corporation, just for an instance, there can be many shareholders, there can be million, there can be tens, and so it is one way of raising an this thing. So what are the disadvantages of the corporate firms? So as I've explained earlier, the one of the disadvantages is the agency relationship. So how better the shareholder interest is been aligned with the board of directors, or how well uh, the what is called as in the board of directors can take an interest into consideration of the shareholders. So who is an agent here? The agent here is management and the member of the board of directors. And so how there are a lot of research, just to cite here, which is very important, a lot of research that has undergone into corporate governance from 1980s till date. So it is almost about 3 decades of research, but all the research shows that there is a conflict of interest between the board of directors and the shareholder. So how to minimize and how to reduce the friction between the conflict of interest, that is one of the in agency we are not talking about how to evaluate, but generally it is based on the economic principle of equilibrium. Generally how both the shareholder as well as the board of directors can come together and act in an interest of one another, in which both the shareholder as well as the board of directors are happy with each other, or both are giving an possible result. So just to summarize, there are three forms of businesses. One is the sole owner, the second is the multiple owner, and the third is unlimited ownership. So what are the characteristics of this firm? So first is the legal requirement. Here it is very easily formed, and multiple owner partnership, there are very little regulations. But whereas in case of unlimited ownership, where the liability is unlimited, in that case you have to undergo a very rigorous legal process. And what are the liabilities in case of sole ownership? Unlimited liabilities. If the firm of a sole owner goes into an bankruptcy, then in that case the sole owner or the proprietor of that firm in case has to sell his own personal property. Whereas in multiple owner, you find that the partners have to share the risk. Whereas in unlimited ownership, the risk is very limited. It is up to the how much the liability, that depends upon the listing agreement and the legal norms. And ability to raise capital in sole ownership is very limited, and so that is why you can see the laws are also very limited. Here multiple owners also very limited. But if you see the unlimited ownership, here you find that nearly unlimited. So that is why the regulations are huge, because you are taking money from the public. So how is the ownership transferable? It is very difficult to transfer. In this case, if you are a sole owner, you can just sell your property or you can sell your business. Whereas in multiple owner, it has to be with the consent. So almost with all the partners, if you want to transfer the ownership. Whereas almost you can call it as it is non-transferable. But whereas in unlimited ownership, you can trade the shares of the firm easily on the stock exchanges of the firm. And so what are the ownership expertise? Here in sole owner, the sole owner has to have all the qualities to run a business and to succeed. Whereas the partner also, you can find they have to have a good ability to run the business. Whereas unlimited ownership, you can divide, you can bring a professional board of directors, and the owners don't have to be into day-to-day management of the businesses. So in this case, you find that ownership expertise is not needed. So if you have a capital, you can hire best of professionals, and you can run the business in a very fine and a nice way. So the main core issues of an agency theory is the conflict between the management and the shareholder conflict.